Welcome to this week's episode of The Interview. I'm your host, Nicole Hendricks. I'm so excited for all my viewers to meet this wonderful person. He is a son, a brother, an uncle, a devoted husband, an amazing speaker, a dynamic teacher, an accomplished author, and an all-around incredible soul. Without further ado, the incomparable Dr. Ricky Allmon. Dr. Allmon, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm going to take up a few minutes of your time. So without further ado, midday empowerment. How did that come about and how long have you been doing it?
Well, first of all, let me say it's my pleasure to have this opportunity to be interviewed by you. And I hope we have a great interview.
Yes, thank you.
Midday empowerment. I started, the name change came about 2 years ago. When I was asked to be the regular facilitator. So it's been about 3 years now since I've been facilitating it full time. And I thought about the fact that it's a 11 a.m. mid-morning Bible study.
True.
And I thought it would be good to have a tag for it that was relevant to what it was
exactly,
and what it's designed to do. I believe any branding or tag that you give to something should speak of its purpose. And so that's where midday empowerment comes from.
Nice. Now, how long have you been doing it besides the 3 years? Like, how were you approached to do
Oh, since I've been here. When I first got here, it's been about 6 years ago now.
Okay.
I was asked to teach what was then Daytimers Bible Study because it was a daytime Bible study. And so once I started teaching it, they seemed to want me to keep teaching it. And so that's how I sort of got just grafted or drafted in to it, because I came in shaping a conversation in the context of Christian education.
Okay.
And so I think the first series I taught was about the 7 churches in the book of Revelations that the Apostle John wrote to, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just want to say that I love midday empowerment because
Thank you.
I can come to midday empowerment because I work at night.
Okay.
So it's perfect. So keep doing it.
Well, wonderful.
And then my next one is, how did you know that you were anointed? Like, how old were you when you realized that you were pretty much, quote unquote, onto something?
It's a great question. So I think the first thing that I need to address is what it means to be anointed. Okay. I think that's very critical.
Yes.
That's a word that's often used in church, and it does not necessarily always translate into the marketplace. Here is my working definition of anointed. Anointed simply means spiritual intelligence expanding human intellect. Okay. It's God's stuff that invades your stuff to create greater stuff, is how I look at it.
I like that.
I knew that there was something unique about me probably as young as 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
And that had a lot to do with my parents and them recognizing the giftedness that God had given me. And as a result of that, they just started cultivating me, and I had the confidence to just walk in, who I was. So I would have to say about 2 years old.
That is awesome. Now, I want to know how and where did you get your start in the ministry?
In my father's church.
Really?
Yeah. Well, actually, my start came at home.
Okay. You just said that.
Yeah, there's a story. When I was about 3 years old, 4 years old, my mother had a best friend who would come over to our home with her children when my dad went to work.
Okay.
And her husband and my dad would carpool together. And I'll never forget, she was over at the house, and my mother had went somewhere else in the house to do something. When my mother comes back, the lady is in tears. She's crying. And she said, "You wouldn't believe it. Your son has just like quoted scripture to me, led me in prayer, led me to Christ," all of those things. So it started at home. And then if I wasn't preaching to adults, I had all the bears, the teddy bears lined up, and I'm preaching to them and praying for them and all of that, baptizing them, just ruining all of the, making a total mess. So it started at home.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, speaking of home, where did you grow up?
I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'll take you all the way back.
Oh,
So
wow.
both of my parents are from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay, I have family there.
Uh,
Get out of here.
and I was raised primarily in Baton Rouge,
Okay.
Louisiana. That's where I matriculated through middle school, high school, and of course into college at Southern University.
Now, were there any siblings around when you were growing up, or was it just you?
No, I'm actually the eldest of 12, believe it or not. There
Get outta here.
7 boys, 5 girls. It's pretty interesting. We all have our father's initials,
Okay.
with the exception of one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's RVA, are the initials. So,
Wow.
but yeah, 7 boys, 5 girls. So I'm the eldest of 12. So my logic behind my parents having 12 kids is that they did so well with me that they wanted to do,
They
it,
wanted to do it
again,
again?
and it took 12 tries, and they still didn't make
I was
it.
about to ask you, did they get it?
No, and my siblings feel the opposite. They feel like they did so terrible that it took 11 other tries to compensate for me.
That's
So
siblings
yeah,
for you. Absolutely.
I'll stick with my story. I think my narrative is the best. So.
Of course, that's siblings for you. Now, take me through your journey of how you got to the Apostolic Church of God.
Interesting story. It was about 2005. I was speaking at a conference in New Orleans, and Bishop Horace Smith, that pastors Apostolic Faith Church here in Chicago, I'd been coming to preach for him for several years by then.
Okay.
And so he had told me, I want you to meet my mentor, Bishop Arthur Embrazier. He's got to hear you. And so I guess he told him about me while I was in New Orleans. I was preaching at a conference. And after I finished preaching, Bishop Brazier comes up to me and says, I want to invite you to the Apostolic Church of God, in his inimitable way.
I was about to say, he said it just
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. And
Exactly.
so he invited me to speak for the Bible conference. And I'll never forget it. After I spoke, I go into the office. He beckons for me to come and sit down where he was. And he says, I want you to come back in 3 months to speak to our men. And then after that, he invited me to speak for a leadership conference and on and on. And in that process, I met Dr. Brazier, who's now the pastor of the church. And we became fast friends. And then fast forward to about 6 years ago, him praying and I was praying, and God spoke to me and says, I want you to go and walk along with him to extend legacy, expand vision, and execute the plan that God has given him. So that's why we're here.
Amazing.
It is.
That's an amazing story. You summed it up so great.
Thank
because
you.
even though it's a long story, it's a long journey. That is awesome. Wow. Dr. Allmon, are you married?
Yes, emphatically yes. That's the best part of my life in every area of my life. I've been married now for 8 years. Got married September 3rd, 2011. That's the day my life became better. I got eternal sunshine. And I'm very blessed by that.
That's
very
awesome.
blessed.
Now, how did your marriage impact your ministry?
Oh, God. Where do I start and how do I measure it? To be honest, it's immeasurable because she's the truest reflection of who I am, of what I'm called to do. And I thank her every day just for being a part of my life. It's one of the things that my wife and I, her name is Demi, one of the things Demi and I always talk about is about capacity, how the person that fits your life will have capacity for your life so that you can become everything that you're supposed to be in your life. And so I think that's the best way I can encapsulate the spiritual significance and how it's impacted my ministry. I would like to say it's made me wiser. It's made me more empathetic. I think I'm not just sympathetic toward people, but I feel where people are. And I would like to think I was already like that. But I think, I call her the softer side of Sears, is how I refer to her sometimes. So I think just having somebody else in your life that values who you are intrinsically, it broadens who you are and helps you to have a greater perspective of what you're called to do.
Wow, that is an awesome story as well. Now, I want to talk about your amazing book,
Okay.
Life Lessons,
Yes.
Living in Full Effectiveness.
Yes.
Let me just say that I read it faithfully every day. But how did that come about? I know it's based on your favorite book in the Bible. I won't say it, but tell the people what your favorite book is and how your book came about.
Okay, so Life Lesson, Living in Full Effectiveness, is based on the book of Proverbs. And the reason it's based on the book of Proverbs, and the reason the book of Proverbs is my favorite book in the Bible, is because it gives you 31 chapters of not just principles and philosophies, but it gives you practical application for daily living.
Yes.
And so every morning, whatever that date is, I read the chapter in Proverbs that corresponds with that date, because that's what Proverbs means to me. And then in a month that has 30 days, or we're in February,
Exactly.
28 days, I just read what on the last day of that month, I read whatever the additional chapters are in Proverbs. And so I've always been drawn to Proverbs because I know how essential and how critical it is to have a guide in your life that keeps you focused on what should matter to your life and in your life. And so I wanted to capture that same spirit in a book that people could use in every area of their life. So this book, Life Lessons, is 31 Proverbs for a life of purpose and productivity, and to help people not only understand what to do, but how to do it, and how to use it in every area of their life. I'm often asked what my favorite chapter or life lesson is in the book, and it would have to be the first one, which is show your scars. And I deal with the power of what you've been through, understanding that the scars in your life or the experiences and circumstances in your life, they don't define you, but they develop you for the destiny that's been prepared for you.
I love the book. So congratulations again on that book.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your support.
Thank you. Absolutely. Of course, I adore you. I
Thank
really
you.
do. Now, how does the next 5 years look for you?
Wow. So coming into this third decade of the 21st century, I came in backwards. So I didn't come into this decade focused on 2020. I came into this decade focused on 2030.
Okay.
So I'm not looking at the next 5 years. I'm really looking at the next 10 years.
Okay.
But more specifically to your question, I think the next 3 years are the most critical. I just turned 47 November 24th of 2019. I know I don't look it. Thank you very much. I appreciate the compliment. So I'm really focused on the next 3 years, what 50 looks like. The way it looks to me is filled with adventure. I don't believe anything in my life right now looks like where I'm headed in the next 3 years, maybe even the next 2 years. So I'm living, I see myself like a 2-year-old.
Okay.
I described this last year when I was doing a little interview for my birthday. I see myself as a 2-year-old that's pulled a chair up to a counter. He's climbed up on the counter. He's gotten some old phone books and he stacked them up and he's climbed on top of those. And he's stand on tiptoes reaching as high as he can. That's how I see my life over the next 2 years, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. I'm trying to reach beyond this orbit and maximize all the potential that's in me so that I can create everything that I'm designed to create.
As they say, no ceilings.
No ceiling at all. What box, right? People say live outside the box. I'm like, what box? There is no box.
Walls.
Exactly.
Tell the viewers where they can reach you at via social media. How can we get in touch with you if we want to purchase your book? If we want to see some of your sermons, how can we find that?
Really simple. Ricky Allmon. That's it. Lowercase, no spaces. RickyAllmon.
And
that's it.
on all platforms.
That's on all platforms. I made it real simple so you can get to me if you want to. Yeah, it's Ricky Allmon.
That is so awesome. Well, Dr. Allmon, thank you so much again for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nicole, for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Wow. I can honestly say my takeaway from this life-changing interview is to aim higher. What was yours? Thank you so much, Dr. Allmon, for taking time out to speak with me. Blessings on everything. Until next week, I'm Nicole Hendricks, and thank you so much for watching.